What would you do if you found a child sleeping alone on a playground, waiting for a mother who may never come back? This is the exact moment that changes everything for Officer Ethan Cole, a hardened cop emotionally closed off, used to a life of strict routines, until he finds Mia, an 8-year-old girl who has been waiting 5 days for a mother who vanished without a trace. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Ethan isn't just dealing with a missing person case. As he digs deeper, he uncovers a truth that will shatter his world. Mia isn't just any lost child. She's his daughter. Before we dive in, what would you do in his shoes? Would you walk away? Or would you risk everything to reunite a family? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love powerful stories of redemption, second chances, and the power of love, hit that subscribe button, because this story is one you'll never forget. The soft hum of the police radio filled the patrol car as Officer Ethan Cole drove slowly down the quiet suburban streets. The late evening sky was painted in fading hues of orange and pink, casting long shadows over the well-manicured lawns. Another night, another uneventful patrol. He exhaled a long breath, running a hand through his short, dark hair. The routine was always the same. Cruise through the neighborhood, watch for anything out of place, return to the station, then back to his cold, empty apartment. His life had become a cycle of predictable motions, a mechanical existence without disruption. As he passed a small playground, something caught his eye. A young girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, sat alone on the swing set. She moved lazily back and forth, her small hands gripping the chains. Her dark curly hair bounced slightly with each gentle sway, her thin legs kicking the air. Too late for a child to be alone. Ethan slowed the car but didn't stop. Kids stayed out late all the time. Parents got distracted. It wasn't his job to check on every kid in the neighborhood. Yet, as he turned the corner, something inside him twisted, a strange unease that settled deep in his chest. He shook it off. Just another night. An hour later, Ethan found himself back on the same street, his patrol circling past the playground once more. But now, it was different. The girl wasn't swinging anymore. She was curled up under the playground slide, her small body barely visible in the dim glow of a nearby street lamp. Ethan's stomach clenched. He pulled the car to the curb, grabbed his flashlight, and stepped out. His boots crunched against the gravel as he approached. Kneeling down, he gently tapped her shoulder. "Hey, kid," he said, keeping his voice soft. "You okay?" The girl stirred, blinking up at him with wide, frightened brown eyes. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stared. Ethan frowned. Where were her parents? "You shouldn't be out here this late," he said, more gentle now. "Where's your family?" The girl hesitated, curling into herself slightly. Then, in a barely audible whisper, she said, "I'm waiting for my mom." Ethan sat beside her on the bench, his police radio crackling softly from his belt. She was small, barely fitting in the oversized hoodie she wore. Her sneakers were scuffed, her jeans dirt-streaked. She looked exhausted, her tiny fingers clutching the sleeves of her jacket as if trying to warm herself. "How long have you been waiting?" Ethan asked. She looked down, hesitating. 5 days. Ethan's breath caught. 5 days, he repeated, his voice sharpening. "Where's your house? Where do you live?" She swallowed hard, her lower lip trembling. "We don't have a home," she admitted. "Mom said to stay here, that she'd come back when she found a job." Ethan felt something twist in his gut. "She hasn't come back?" Mia shook her head. A long silence stretched between them, filled only by the distant sound of cars passing in the night. Ethan ran a hand over his face. This wasn't just some kid staying out too late. This was a child abandoned with nowhere to go. He couldn't ignore this. Not this time. The police station was a stark contrast to the quiet night outside. Bright fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the faint scent of stale coffee clung to the air. Ethan led Mia inside, ignoring the curious looks from his colleagues. "Lost kid?" Detective Ryan Mercer asked, arching a skeptical brow as Ethan passed. "Something like that," Ethan muttered, steering Mia toward his desk. He grabbed a blanket from the emergency supply closet and draped it over her shoulders. She looked at him cautiously, as if unsure whether to accept the kindness. "I need to make some calls," Ethan told her. Social services will find you a safe place for the night. Mia's small fingers clenched the edges of the blanket. Will they find my mom? She asked softly. Ethan paused, his jaw tightening. I'll do everything I can, he said. It wasn't protocol to make promises. It wasn't his job to get emotionally involved. But as Mia looked up at him with hopeful, trusting eyes, Ethan felt something shift inside him. A long-buried instinct, one he had ignored for years, began to stir. He wasn't just going to log her case and move on. He was going to find Sophia Lawson. Ethan sat in his dark apartment, a single lamp casting a dim glow over the desk. His laptop screen flickered as he typed into the police database. Sophia Lawson, missing person report. Nothing. He narrowed his eyes, expanding the search parameters. Still nothing. No recent calls, no records, no reported incidents. Like she had vanished. Ethan exhaled sharply, leaning back in his chair. The right thing to do would be to let social services handle it. He had done his part. He had taken Mia in, made the necessary calls. And yet, his mind kept circling back to that tiny, curled-up form under the slide. The way Mia had clutched that thin hoodie around her small shoulders. The way she had asked, with quiet desperation, "Do you think she's still looking for me?" Ethan rubbed a hand over his face. He had spent years shutting himself off from emotions, from getting attached. It was easier that way. But this was different. He closed his laptop. He already knew. He wasn't walking away from this case. The police station was alive with the usual late-night hum. Phones ringing, officers shuffling paperwork, the scent of stale coffee lingering in the air. Ethan Cole stood at his desk, staring at the blank missing persons report in front of him. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating longer than they should. Filing this case meant something different than his usual reports. It wasn't just another disappearance to be logged, processed, and eventually forgotten. It was personal. He clenched his jaw and started typing. Name: Sophia Lawson. Age: 32. Last seen: 5 days ago. Possible locations: unknown. As he filled out the details, Detective Ryan Mercer strolled over, sipping his coffee. Didn't peg you as the sentimental type, Mercer commented, glancing at the report over Ethan's shoulder. What's the story? Ethan exhaled. Found her daughter sleeping at a playground. She's been waiting for her mom to come back. But there's no sign of her. Mercer's brow furrowed. 5 days? That's bad. I know. Mercer set his coffee down. Listen, I get that this one's hitting you harder than usual. But don't go playing hero. Social services can handle it. Ethan's grip on the keyboard tightened. And if they don't? If she's out there hurt or worse? Mercer sighed. You're really going all in on this, huh? Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he hit submit on the missing persons report. Case officially filed. The foster home was a small, cozy house on the edge of town, but despite its warmth, it felt temporary, as if no child who stayed there ever truly belonged. Ethan knocked, and a social worker let him in. Mia sat on the couch, hugging a stuffed bear tightly against her chest. When she saw him, her eyes lit up for just a second before dimming again, as if afraid to hope. Did you find her? She asked immediately. Ethan sat on the edge of the couch, leaning forward. Not yet, but I'm looking. Mia gripped the stuffed bear tighter. What if she's gone? Ethan hesitated. He had faced criminals, violent situations, and moments where life and death were decided in an instant. But this? Comforting a scared little girl? That felt impossible. She's not gone, he said firmly. I just need to follow the right leads. And I will find her. Mia studied him for a moment. Then, in a small voice, she whispered, You promise? Something in Ethan's chest twisted. I promise, he said. But as he left the foster home that night, he couldn't shake the doubt in her eyes. The Silver Spoon Diner was a hole-in-the-wall kind of place. Red booths, a flickering neon sign, and a tired waitress refilling coffee cups like it was second nature. Ethan walked inside, flashing his badge at the counter. I'm looking for someone who used to work here. Sophia Lawson. You remember her? The woman behind the counter, Denise, nodded, her expression turning sympathetic. Yeah, I remember Sophia. Hard worker. Sweet girl. Ethan's heart pounded. When was the last time you saw her? Denise thought for a moment. About a week ago. She was desperate, said she needed a better-paying job, told me she had a lead, but Denise frowned. I don't think she trusted it. Ethan's gut tightened. What do you mean? She said she was meeting someone about work, but she didn't say where. Just that she hoped it was legit. Did she mention a name? Denise shook her head. No, but she looked nervous. Ethan scribbled in his notebook, the pieces starting to come together. Sophia had gone to meet someone and never came back. Back at the station, Ethan pored over security footage from local gas stations on the night Sophia disappeared. His eyes burned from staring at the screen. But then, there, a grainy image of Sophia standing outside a gas station at 10:47 p.m., wearing the same jacket Mia had described. She looked worried, kept glancing around. Then, a dark-colored car pulled up. The driver's face wasn't visible, but Sophia hesitated before finally getting into the car. And just like that, she was gone. Ethan replayed the footage, his pulse quickening. Who was the driver? Where did they take her? A heavy weight settled in his chest. This wasn't just a mother vanishing. This was starting to look like foul play. Ethan was halfway through his third cup of coffee when his desk phone rang. "This is Cole," he answered, rubbing his temples. A voice on the other end spoke hesitantly. "Officer, this is St. Mary's Hospital. We received a Jane Doe from a hit-and-run 5 nights ago. No ID, no visitors. She's been in a coma since she arrived." Ethan straightened. "And you're calling me because—" The nurse hesitated. "She fits the description of the missing woman you reported." For a moment, the room went silent. Ethan's heartbeat slammed in his ears. "Does she have a daughter?" he asked, his voice tight. "She didn't have any personal belongings on her, but based on the details you filed, she might be the one you're looking for." Ethan didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way." He grabbed his coat, heart pounding against his ribs. Was this it? Had he finally found Sophia Lawson? Or was he already too late? Ethan stood outside room 214 of St. Mary's Hospital, his pulse pounding in his ears. He had seen countless victims in hospitals before, bruised, broken, some beyond saving. But this was different. This time, it was personal. Taking a steady breath, he stepped inside. The beeping of machines filled the air, the sterile scent of antiseptic thick in his nose. And there she was, lying in the hospital bed. Sophia Lawson looked fragile, her face bruised, her body still. The last time Ethan had seen her, she had been a memory, someone he had pushed aside in his past. Now, she was real, and she was the woman he had been searching for. His throat tightened. He moved closer, studying her face. The curve of her cheeks, the delicate shape of her nose. There was something painfully familiar about her, a pull in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Then, like a punch to the gut, the realization hit him. He knew her, and not just from this case. He had loved her once. Ethan sat heavily in the chair beside Sophia's bed, head in his hands. The memories came flooding back. High school, long summer nights, stolen kisses, promises whispered under bleachers. Sophia had been his first love, the only woman who had ever truly known him. They had dreamed of forever, but life had taken them down different roads. He had chosen the academy, determined to prove himself. She had chosen her independence, refusing to be tied down. And then they had lost touch. A sharp pang of regret twisted inside him. He had never looked back, had never wondered what had happened to her. But now she was lying unconscious in front of him, and he was the one trying to piece her life together. The next morning, Ethan found himself back at the foster home, standing in front of Mia Lawson. She sat on the edge of her bed, clutching her stuffed bear, her eyes searching his face. "Did you find her?" she asked quietly. Ethan hesitated. "I found a woman in the hospital," he admitted. "She looks like your mom, but she's been in an accident." Mia's grip on her bear tightened. "Is she okay?" "She's stable," Ethan said carefully, "but she hasn't woken up yet." Mia swallowed hard, and for a moment, she looked so small. Then, without a word, she reached into the collar of her oversized hoodie and pulled out a tiny, silver locket. Ethan frowned. "What's that?" Mia opened it with trembling fingers. Inside, a photo. A young Sophia, laughing, vibrant, and beside her, Ethan's breath caught him. The picture was old, slightly faded, but there was no mistaking it. He was in that locket. Ethan felt the world tilt beneath him. His voice came out rough. "Mia, did your mom ever talk about your dad?" Mia hesitated. "She said he was a good man," she whispered. "She said he didn't know about me." Ethan's stomach twisted, because she was right. He hadn't known. And now, staring at the child in front of him, he couldn't ignore the truth. She was his daughter. Ethan sat outside the hospital clinic, tapping his fingers against the plastic chair. The paternity test wasn't necessary. He already knew the answer. But he needed proof. Needed something tangible to confirm the reality that was already settling into his bones. A nurse approached, holding a folder. "Detective Cole?" He looked up sharply. "Yeah." She handed him the file. Test results came in faster than expected. "You're a match." Ethan stared at the paper, the words blurring slightly. "Mia Lawson, biological father, Ethan Cole." A slow, unsteady breath left his chest. There it was. Cold, clinical confirmation of something that shouldn't have shocked him, but did. He had a daughter, and for 8 years, he hadn't even known. That night, Ethan sat in his apartment, staring at his old high school yearbook. His finger traced over Sophia's smiling face. All this time, he could have been there, could have been part of Mia's life, and Sophia had never told him. Why? The thought gnawed at him, filling his mind with doubts, with anger, with questions he wasn't sure how to ask. And yet, when he closed his eyes, all he could see was Mia's hopeful face, her tiny hands gripping that locket as if it were her last connection to the only family she had left. A decision settled inside him. He couldn't change the past, but he could change the future. For Mia, for Sophia, for himself. With renewed determination, Ethan grabbed his keys and headed out the door. Tomorrow, he would go back to the hospital, because this wasn't just a missing persons case anymore. This was his family, and he wasn't going to lose them again. Ethan Cole sat in the dim glow of his office, stacks of notes spread out before him. The hospital report confirmed what he already feared. Sophia had been a hit-and-run victim. But who left her for dead? And why? He drummed his fingers against his desk, staring at the police logs from the night she disappeared. Nothing stood out. No reported collisions, no witnesses stepping forward. Then a detail caught his eye. A traffic camera near the gas station, positioned 1 block away from where Sophia was found. Grabbing his keys, Ethan rushed out the door. He had a gut feeling this would lead him somewhere. The security office smelled of stale coffee and old electronics as Ethan watched the grainy footage play on the screen. The timestamp read 10:49 p.m., the night Sophia disappeared. A dark sedan sped through the intersection, right near where Sophia had been hit. "Pause it there," Ethan said, leaning forward. The operator froze the frame. Though the license plate was blurred, the driver's side window was slightly down, revealing a man's silhouette. Ethan's stomach tightened. The car matched the one seen at the gas station when Sophia got in. "Can you enhance this?" Ethan asked. The operator nodded and zoomed in on the driver. The image sharpened just enough for a partial view of his face, but it was enough. Ethan recognized him immediately. James Whitmore, wealthy businessman, known for cutting corners and shady dealings. And now, a prime suspect in Sophia's accident. Ethan arrived at Whitmore's office building, his blood simmering. The receptionist barely had time to react before Ethan stormed past her, heading straight to the executive floor. Whitmore looked up from his desk, unfazed. "Officer Cole," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Ethan tossed a printed still of the footage onto Whitmore's desk. "Recognize this car?" Whitmore's expression barely flickered. "A black sedan? That could be anyone's." Ethan's fists clenched. "Cut the crap. We have footage of you picking up Sophia Lawson at a gas station. Then, minutes later, she's left for dead in the street. Want to explain how that happened?" Whitmore sighed dramatically. "Detective, I don't know what you think you have, but I had nothing to do with..." Ethan slammed his hands on the desk, leaning in close. "You hit her with your car and left her to die." Whitmore finally looked rattled. I didn't mean to," he muttered. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then start talking. Sophia's world was a blur of bright lights and pain. Her body felt heavy, her mind foggy. She heard beeping machines, the rustle of movement around her. Then, a voice. Sophia? The sound was familiar. Deep, steady, warm. She forced her eyes open, blinking against the harsh light. Ethan sat beside her bed, his face etched with concern. She swallowed, her throat dry. Ethan? Relief flooded his features. Yeah, it's me. Her memories were fractured, disjointed. She tried to piece them together. Her voice cracked. I was meeting someone. Ethan leaned closer. James Whitmore. He admitted to picking you up that night. Sophia's breath hitched. She remembered now. His false promises of a job, the unease she felt the moment she got into his car. Then the argument. Then the headlights. A tear slipped down her cheek. He left me there, didn't he? Ethan nodded grimly. But he's not walking away from it this time. Sophia shifted in her hospital bed, her body weak but her mind clearing. There was something she needed to say. She turned to Ethan, eyes filled with emotion. There's something else, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan held her gaze, sensing the weight of what was coming. I never told you about Mia, she continued, because I was trying to protect her. Ethan's chest tightened. Sophia squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening. You were becoming a cop back then. It was dangerous. You were chasing criminals, putting yourself in harm's way. I didn't want Mia to grow up watching the news, wondering if her father was coming home. Ethan's heart ached. All these years, he had believed he had lost something with Sophia. But in reality, he had never even known what he was missing. Mia deserves to know the truth, Sophia whispered. Ethan swallowed hard. She does. And I'm not going anywhere. Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. For the first time since waking up, she smiled. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Ethan stood outside Sophia's hospital room, Mia's small hand wrapped tightly in his. It had been a week since Sophia woke up. A week since Ethan learned the truth. A week since he found out he had a daughter. And now? Now, it was time for them to meet again. Mia's fingers trembled in his grasp. What if she doesn't remember me? Ethan crouched to her level. Mia, there's not a chance in the world she could ever forget you. Mia swallowed hard. Her big brown eyes searched his face, and after a beat, she nodded. Together, they stepped inside. Sophia was sitting up in bed, her hair a little messy, her eyes tired but alive. The moment she saw Mia, her breath hitched. Mia, the little girl froze. Ethan felt Mia's fingers tighten around his own before. She ran, straight into her mother's arms. Sophia held Mia tightly, as if she were afraid to let go. Tears streamed down her face as she buried her lips into Mia's curls. Oh, baby, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Mia clung to her, her tiny body shaking with relief. I waited, Mommy, she whispered. I waited for you. Sophia pulled back, cupping Mia's cheeks. I tried to come back. Her voice broke. I never wanted to leave you. Ethan looked away, giving them a moment. For all the years he had missed, for all the times he should have been there, he knew one thing for certain. This was their moment, and he wouldn't take it from them. But when Sophia's tear-filled gaze flicked up to him, something shifted between them. A silent understanding, an unspoken promise. They weren't just going to fix this for Mia. They were going to fix this for all of them. A few days later, Sophia was cleared for release. There was just one problem. She had nowhere to go. Sitting beside her hospital bed, Ethan scratched his jaw, hesitant. I know things are complicated, he said, but you and Mia shouldn't be apart again. Sophia's fingers traced the edge of the hospital blanket. Ethan, I don't want to be a burden. You're not, he said immediately. Sophia looked at him. He held her gaze. Then, more carefully, he added, stay with me, just until we figure out a plan. Sophia hesitated. Are you sure? Mia needs stability, Ethan said, and I need to make up for lost time. Sophia's expression softened. Finally, she nodded. All right, she whispered. Let's give this a shot. Ethan's apartment felt different with Sophia and Mia inside it. For the first time in years, it felt like a home. As the days passed, they settled into a rhythm. Mia's laughter filled the once silent space. Sophia's presence turned it into something warmer. One evening, as Mia was coloring at the kitchen table, Sophia leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I never thought we'd end up here, she admitted. Ethan exhaled. Me neither. Sophia studied him for a long moment before asking, what happens now? Ethan turned toward her, his heart pounding. I want to be more than just a cop in Mia's life, he said. Sophia's lips parted slightly. I missed 8 years of my daughter's life, and I don't want to miss another second. He took a steady breath. I want us to be a family. Sophia's breath hitched, and for a long moment, she said nothing. Then, softly, Ethan. Sophia stepped closer. Her fingers brushed against his wrist, tentative. Are you sure? She whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened. I've never been more sure of anything. Sophia's eyes searched his, and then, with a quiet, unspoken understanding, she kissed him. It was soft, hesitant at first, but the moment Ethan cupped the back of her neck, deepening the kiss, he felt something click into place. This was right. This was home. When they pulled apart, Sophia smiled through her tears. I never stopped loving you. Ethan's fingers brushed her cheek. Then let's do this. Together. And just like that, their second chance began. Ethan never imagined picking out curtains would be part of his life. Yet, here he was, standing in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, debating between soft blue or warm beige with Mia and Sophia. Mia pointed to the blue ones excitedly. They look like the sky. Sophia chuckled, running her fingers over the fabric. I think that's a great choice. Ethan, standing beside them, felt something unfamiliar settle inside him. Peace. Over the past few weeks, the community had rallied together, donating furniture, household supplies, even groceries. The once empty apartment now felt warm, lived in, and for the first time, Ethan felt something more than just duty. He felt home. Mia tugged at his sleeve. Do you like it, Ethan? He looked at the bright-eyed girl who had changed his world. I love it, he said, and he meant it. That night, as Sophia tucked Mia into her new bed, Ethan lingered in the doorway. Mia looked up sleepily. Mommy, do you think we'll stay here forever? Sophia stroked her hair. I think we just might, sweetheart. Ethan stepped inside, his heart pounding. Mia, he said carefully. She blinked up at him. Yeah. Ethan exhaled slowly. How would you feel if I became your dad? Mia's eyes widened. Sophia turned toward him, surprised but not shocked. You mean like, for real? Mia whispered. Ethan knelt beside her bed. For real. For a moment, there was silence. Then, in a voice small but sure, Mia whispered. I'd like that. Ethan swallowed past the lump in his throat. Yeah. Mia nodded, grinning. Yeah. Sophia's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. And in that moment, Ethan knew he had found his purpose. A few days later, as they walked through the park, Mia slipped her tiny hand into Ethan's. He looked down at her. You okay, kiddo? She bit her lip, then looked up at him. Can I call you Dad? Ethan stopped walking. Mia's face was uncertain, searching. I mean, if you want me to. A lump formed in his throat. He crouched down to her level, gently cupping her cheek. You can call me Dad anytime you want, Mia. Her eyes filled with happy tears. Then, without warning, she threw her arms around his neck. Ethan held her tight, his chest aching with emotions he never thought he'd feel again. Snow blanketed the streets as Christmas lights flickered in the windows. Inside their apartment, the air was filled with the scent of cinnamon and hot cocoa. Mia giggled as she hung a crooked star on their tiny Christmas tree. Ethan helped her adjust it. Perfect. Sophia, setting plates on the table, smiled. I can't believe we pulled this together. Ethan looked around. The small decorations, the wrapped presents, the warmth in the air. I can, he said softly. Sophia met his gaze, and for a moment, the world slowed. Then Mia grabbed their hands. Come on, it's time to eat. They all sat at the table, sharing laughter, stories, Memories in the making. For the first time in as long as he could remember, Ethan wasn't alone. The police station was quiet when Ethan stepped into his office. In his hands was a frame drawing, one Mia had given him that morning. A crayon sketch of 3 people holding hands. Above them, in wobbly letters, she had written, "My family." Ethan swallowed hard, then hung it on the wall above his desk. Detective Mercer walked by, peering at it. "You went from loner to full-time family man in record time," he mused. Ethan smirked. "Yeah, well, some things are worth fighting for." Mercer clapped him on the back. "Glad you finally figured that out." Ethan looked at the drawing one last time, his heart full. Then, with a small, contented smile, he got back to work. Because he finally had something worth coming home to. Life has a way of bringing people together when they need it most. Officer Ethan Cole thought he was simply doing his job, but in reality, he was walking into the most important mission of his life, reuniting a lost child with her mother, only to discover a family he never knew he had. This story isn't just about finding Sophia, or even about Ethan learning the truth about Mia. It's about second chances, the power of love, and how sometimes, the people we're meant to find are the ones who help us find ourselves. So, let me ask you, do you believe in fate? Have you ever had a moment where life unexpectedly led you to something, or someone, you never saw coming? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories. And if this story moved you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories just like this one. Every journey has its twists and turns, and here, we uncover the ones that truly touch the heart. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update, and let's keep diving into these incredible, emotional stories together. Until next time, stay inspired and never stop believing in second chances.